Good morning, my lovely students. How are you today? Nice to meet you again. We will continue discussing our story, Horace and Maurice, but mostly Dolores. The author is James Howe. The genre is fantasy, and we will discuss the skill, which is characters and settings. Um, let's talk about the genre now. Um, Fantasy and reality. The genre is fantasy, but fantasy is the opposite of reality. So let's know what's the meaning of uh, fantasy. The difference between realistic and fantasy. Realistic is a story that could really happen in the real life, but the fantasy tells about something that could never happen. It will never happen in the real life. Okay, let's take these examples. The sheep told his master that he was ready to be clipped. Um, think with me. Is it fantasy or reality? Read it again. The sheep told his master that he was ready to be clipped. Think, is it fantasy or reality? It is fantasy. Why it is fantasy? Because it will never happen in the real life. Okay, let's take the second one. Jake skated down the street on his skateboard. Again, Jake skated down the street on his skateboard. Is it fantasy or reality? It could happen in the real life or it will never happen in the real life. Think with me. Okay, let's see. It is reality. Why? Because it could be happen in the real life. The stars twinkled in the sky. Again, the stars twinkled in the sky. Is it fantasy or reality? Think it could be happen in real life or it will never happen in the real life. Think with me. Let's see the answer. It is reality. Why? Because it could be happen in the real life. Now we will talk about the skills in this story, which is characters and settings. What's the meaning of characters? Characters are the people or animals in the story. The main character is the most important character in the story. For example, you all of you know Cinderella, right? Cinderella is a story. It is a nice story. The characters in this story are the people inside this story who act this story. For example, Cinderella, her sisters, um, the prince, right? Now, the main character is the most important character in the story. Who's the main character in the story, in Cinderella story? Of course, it is Cinderella. So Cinderella is the main character in the story. So again, characters are the people who, the people or animals in a story. Settings. settings that tells where and when the story takes place, or where and when it happened, the story happened. For example, where maybe in the school, at home, um, and on the beach, like that. But when maybe in the morning, maybe in the summer, maybe like that. Maybe it is a time, maybe it is a season, maybe it is a part of the day, morning or evening or like that. So it the story tells where and when the story takes place. Okay. Uh, the vocabs in our story: adventures. Could we go up? Okay, adventure. Uh, Read with me the meaning of adventure: an exciting experience or activity. So, what's the meaning of adventure? It is an exciting experience or activity. Um, let's read an example using adventures. We had lots of adventures on our trip. We had lots of adventures on our trip. Okay. The second one, wondered. Wondered means desire to know something. Wondered means desire to know something. An example, she wondered what he meant. She wondered what he meant. Exploring. Exploring. Exploring means traveling around, discovering. An example, I was exploring our garden. I was exploring our garden. Climbed. Climb means an act of going up. An act of going up. He climbed the tree. He climbed the tree. Clubhouse. Clubhouse is a group of persons meeting, having a particular interest or activity. Again, clubhouse means a group of persons meeting, having a particular interest or activity. An example, we plan to meet at the clubhouse weekly. We plan to meet at the clubhouse weekly. Greatest, an amount above the normal. An amount above the normal. You got the greatest score. You got the greatest score. Truest, it means true of all. True of all. You are the truest of all. You are the truest of all. Now, um, I will let you listen to the story.
Horace and Morris, but mostly Dolores, by James Howe. Illustrated by Amy Rod. Genre: Fantasy is a make-believe story that could never happen in the real world. What makes this story a fantasy?
Horace and Morris, but mostly Dolores, loved adventure. They sailed the 7 sewers. They climbed Mount Everest. They dared to go where no mouse had gone before. Horace and Morris, but mostly Dolores, never said, "This is something we shouldn't do." They said, "This is something we've got to do." And so there was almost nothing they didn't do. Horace and Morris and Dolores were friends, the greatest of friends, the truest of friends, the now and forever I'm yours sort of friends. And then one day, Horace and Morris had a decision to make. They didn't want to do anything without Dolores, but as Horace pointed out, a boy mouse must do what a boy mouse must do. Bet you can't say that 3 times real fast, Dolores said with a smile. Horace and Morris didn't even try. They didn't even smile. "Goodbye, Dolores," they said. What kind of place doesn't allow girls? Dolores wondered as she watched her friends step through the door of the Mega Mice Clubhouse. Yikes! Downhearted, Dolores went on her way, alone. It wasn't long before Dolores had a decision to make. She didn't really want to do anything without Horace and Morris, but she figured a girl mouse must do what a girl mouse must do. She said this aloud 3 times, real fast, just to prove that she could. A girl mouse must do what a girl mouse must do. I'll bet Horace and Morris couldn't do that, she thought. But she wasn't smiling as she stepped through the door of the Cheese Puffs Clubhouse. Day after day, Dolores went to the Cheese Puffs. Day after day, Horace and Morris went to Megamice. They missed playing with each other, but as they said, a girl mouse must do what a girl mouse must do. A boy mouse must do what a boy mouse must do. Horace and Morris and even Dolores were sure their friendship would never be the same. But then, one day, Dolores made a different decision. "I'm bored," she announced. The other girls stared. "Anybody here want to build a fort? How about a roque fort?" The other girls booed. "Okay, forget the cheese. I'm sick of making things out of cheese anyway. Let's go exploring." The other girls gasped. "Phooey," said Dolores. "I quit." "If you quit, then I quit too," a small voice said from the back of the room. Outside, Dolores introduced herself. "I'm Dolores." "I'm Cloris," said the girl. "Now, where can we go to have some real fun around here?" Dolores thought and thought. "I've got it," she said at last. "Who wants to go exploring?" "With girls?" "Yuck!" "No way." "I do." "Me too." "Can I come too, please?" The 5 friends spent the rest of the day exploring. Cloris and Boris and Horace and Morris, but mostly Dolores. And the next day, they built a clubhouse of their own.
Okay, uh, we said that this story is about 3 adventurous mice, that the 3 mice had amazing friendship and were always together. One day, Horace and Morris joined the Mega Mice Club, where girl mice weren't allowed. Dolores felt left out and lonely, but then she started her own girls' cheese puff clubhouse where boys weren't allowed to enter. Eventually, the friendship faded away, but one day Dolores came up with a different decision of finishing the clubhouse and joining her old friendship. Um, okay. Uh, Teacher, we did this before in your RCV booklets, page 17. What message do you think the author of this funny story is trying to give you? I wrote already the answer in the red uh, color, and I think most of you have the answer. How did things change for each main character, and where did these changes happen? The third one, what happens in the story that brings the friends back together? Thank you, teacher, for listening. If you didn't understand anything, you can now ask